Pounce, Mio Pone Pitigisgao. Hello, good afternoon. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sikowis Nobiss, and I'm Plains Cree Saulteaux of the George Gordon First Nation, also known as Nehiyah. Plains Cree is also known as Nehiyah in our more traditional way of calling ourselves. And I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, not too far from my reservation, which is in Saskatchewan. And I've been living in Iowa City, Iowa for 19 years now, and I'm the executive director of Great Plains Action Society. And today with me, I have Jessica Engelking, who is our representation director, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Engelking. I'm the representation director for Great Plains Action Society. I am a direct descendant of the White Earth Ojibwe in northern Minnesota. And I met Sikowis about 20 years ago when we were both in grad school at the University of Iowa. I got my master's in philosophy, and I've been using that in my role as a representation director with Great Plains.
Thank you so much, Jess. So today we are very honored to be here for the Lens series through the Human Rights Commission of Iowa City, and very thankful to Stephanie, who, I mean, just does so much work that she goes above and beyond just, her day-to-day job. So thank you, Stephanie, for asking us to be here. And yeah, I do look a little sweaty. I'm actually in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, and I'm presenting right after this presentation at the Remax building. So yes, those are tiles behind me. I'm in the showroom of the Remax building here in Fergus Falls. So I will be doing a short about a half an hour's worth of talking about Great Plains Action Society and what it is that we do as an organization. And then bringing Jessica on about halfway through, who can talk a little more about what we do, and then take some questions. And then I'll have to hop off because I have to run over to my next presentation. Firstly, thank you for being here. And I am going to start off by just telling you, who we are. We are 7 people, and we are all Native American, and we come from mostly tribes that are that lived that still live and thrive on the Great Plains, like the Winnebago and Omaha and Meskwaki, and my tribe, the George Gordon First Nation, which is Plains Cree and Saulteaux, and even the Anishinaabe folks, where Jess is from, some of their territories are transitioned a little bit into the Plains area, and we do a lot of stuff. We are a small organization, but we work across on Iowa, mostly Iowa, which is the land of the Iowa, the Meskwaki, the Winnebago, the Omaha, and the Sac and Iowa. I don't know if I said Iowa people. And then we work across eastern Nebraska, and we do a lot of work in Sioux City, which sits on the border of Iowa and Nebraska and South Dakota. We do some work in Omaha, and we have a youth organizer that actually lives in Minnesota, and that was doing some amazing political education work on Minnesota legislation for some time, and she's now transitioning, or sorry, they are now transitioning to doing that same work here in Iowa leading up to the presidential election. And we've been around since, it's kind of a long, it's kind of a long story. I had been trying to get something off the ground since I graduated from school here in 2008, because I was really lonely. In Winnipeg, where I grew up, I jokingly calling it the resiest city of Turtle Island because there's just so many natives in Winnipeg. I mean, there's like, if you go on there, if you look up stats for natives in Winnipeg, I think at this point it says there's like 100,000 there, both First Nation and Métis people, and self-identifying and reconnecting and all that. And then so coming from there, and then coming, being able to visit my res and just be around so many natives when I grew up, I just felt really lonely after I graduated because we did have the Native American Student Association. Sorry, there's people talking. So yeah, so sorry about that. So we I completely lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so I just after doing some work at the university while I was doing my graduate degree there, I got my master's degree in religious studies with a focus on Native American religion and tradition, and my graduate minor in Native studies. And so, I was really active, with the student association, but even that wasn't a lot. I mean, there's so few natives that, are part of the Native American Student Association at the university. It's usually never more than 10 people, and that's a big number. But so after I graduated, I felt so lonely, like Iowa, has about 16,000 natives scattered throughout the whole state. And there are, some concentrations like in Tama, where the Meskwaki Nation is, or Sioux City, where we probably have our largest concentration of natives. But like I said, it felt really, really lonely. And so, I kept trying to get people to come together, even as a social club, just to hang out. And I guess because Iowa's such a transient place, Iowa City, actually, people they come and go. And, that was also very hard. But one day, Jess said to me, "Hey, let's go to Standing Rock." And so, we drove up to Standing Rock in my little tiny Toyota Tacoma, and we had it filled with donations. And that kind of was it. A lot of people started to want to help us out. And I kept it going. And we just kept growing and growing, till we eventually became a 501c4, and now we're a 501c3 actually. But it started out with just me and this dream. I definitely was not meant to be an academic. I definitely realized that I would probably be not given tenure because I'm too polemic and biased, as they say. So being an organizer, a community organizer, definitely suits me as an individual. As it does, I think, a lot of other people that are part of Great Plains Action Society. We are very passionate about what we do, not only because we live the experience of being an Indigenous person, but we have passion to make things better. I always say that being born Native is a political act in this country, because the government is essentially scared of us. We have power. Indigenous people in this country actually have power, when it comes to treaties and stolen land and relationships with the government. And so, because of that, we do face a lot of issues. The government is still trying to genocide us in a variety of ways. And not just the government, but like state sanctioned, ways of being and living in this world that are essentially dangerous for Indigenous peoples. And so I am going to share with you my screen right now, and see, so you can see like our wheel. So this is our initial, this is our theory of or this is like our wheel of our mechanism of how we work. Can you all see this? Stephanie, can you see it?
Yes, yep.
Okay, perfect. So our mission is at the center of our work. And this is on our website, by the way. So this is on the very first page of our website, if you want to take a look. Our mission is at the center of our work and is built upon community engagement and grassroots initiatives. We are very grassroots. I just want to say that. I had no idea how to form an organization, and we have just been building as we go and figuring out as we go. Nobody here is an expert. Being true to our mission has helped us define our work into 3 initiatives. So our mission is at the very center here in red. And it says we address the trauma that Indigenous peoples on the earth face and work to prevent further colonial capitalist violence, focusing on grassroots community efforts. Also, I should note cultural efforts as well, because culture is very much a part of like what we use to combat Christian colonial capitalism and to decolonize and indigenize and rematriate the world. So that's at the center of our mission. Our mission is at the center of our circle. And then we have our initiatives. We have 3 initiatives. We have our land defense initiative, and that's really what Great Plains Action Society was born upon. That was me and Jess going to Standing Rock. And also at that time too, my awakening for a few years prior about big ag here in Iowa. And I'll talk more about that in a sec. But like, so land defense is really, protecting the climate and the environment and essentially, Mother Earth. We have our Protect the Sacred initiative, which is all about stopping, ending, abolishing, however you want to say it, colonial violence to our bodies, to Indigenous peoples. So that is basically ending the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives crisis. And a lot of that work is done through Sioux City by Trisha Rivers and now Yvonne Salazar, who actually just joined our group recently. But all of us actually do that work, I would say. Like we all have presentations or events or actions that we take part of across the state and even the country, and even in Europe. So, and in other parts of the world, for instance, I was just in Costa Rica talking about this issue. And then we have our representation initiative, which is what Jess heads up. And representation is kind of broad, but really is about how we have to overcome whitewashing, stereotypes, basically the lies that exist concerning us, and the horrible ways that we are represented at times, and then also our erasure, how we are not represented in so many cases in different spaces. So for instance, the representation consists of our civic engagement work, so getting out the vote, working on issues like reproductive liberation, abortion, and also mascots, getting rid of racist mascots. And I will actually talk to Jess about that a little later, about mascots that we're dealing with here in Iowa. And then just other issues that come up. And like, again, Jess can do a great job of talking about that. Oh yeah, representation also includes getting rid of whitewashed holidays like Thanksgiving. Well, not getting rid of them, but transforming them. Getting rid of that mythology, though, that natives and Puritans sat down and broke bread and we're all good, which is just a complete lie. We can still celebrate Thanksgiving, but we call it Truthsgiving, and it's actually become quite a big deal here in Iowa City. So again, we'll talk about that later. And then how do we carry all this out? Like, how do we carry out these 3 initiatives? Mutual aid is such a huge part of what we do. For instance, for our Protect the Sacred initiative, we have a legacy fund that Trish set up, and we give funds to families that have family members who are victims of the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives crisis, basically people that have been murdered. We work with the families and help them to travel to court cases, to buy um, you know, car seats for kids because, you know, there are kids that are left without moms or dads. And we buy them Airbnbs so they can be like, you know, at a court case for a while if they have to be. We help them with their memorials because they have yearly memorials, shirt printing, buying food. We recently helped a family even transport a body from Sioux City to one of the reservations over in South Dakota. So it's very hard work. Uh, and it's very much about mutual aid. We work with people. We don't just like act like it's a charity. And Trisha is absolutely amazing at that part of the job. It's very hard, but she's really amazing at it. If you go to our YouTube site, you can click on it from the front page of our website. There's actually some videos in there of her that she's put together where she's interviewing, I believe, the Lenise Blackbird family, and you'll get a good understanding of what it is we do. Um, so it's not just mutual aid through the Legacy Fund, just mutual aid in general. We do a lot of like free pop-up shops and giveaways in Sioux City. We also support the Des Moines Mutual Aid Fund. One of our folks, Ronnie Free, is one of the founders of Des Moines Mutual Aid. And we've been paying him to do that work now for a few years because he's an Indigenous man and he's working all the time. He has a full-time job and then he does mutual aid on the weekends, basically handing out burritos to houseless communities and helping them out like on Sundays for delivering propane. They do a lot of work, which is really important. And so we just help like him, Ronnie, so he can do this job without completely burning out. Because brown and black folks do need to get paid for their labor. It's actually, we are very adamant about that. We always make sure that we pay, folks that work with us for their efforts. So other ways we, combat, the trauma that Indigenous folks on the earth face is through culture. A great example of that is our missing and murdered Indigenous relatives powwow, or just, the way we talk about things, the way we push back at things. We might even have like, I remember one time we had this little mini powwow at the Capitol building in downtown, in Des Moines. And also Trisha does women and girls workshops, and they bead and they sew and they cut, they draw. So they'll be making ribbon skirts, I believe, next week too. Political engagement is really important. Everything we do, unfortunately, comes down to legislation. Everything. And that's really unfortunate because, this political system has not been set up for folks like myself, or Black folks or Latina folks, or, Muslim folks, or, anybody who's oppressed, and even women, right? And disabled folks. It's not set up for us to succeed. It's set up for, the toxic patriarchy and honestly, really the toxic white patriarchy to succeed. And so, we ask ourselves, like, why do we even want to be involved in it? Well, it's unfortunate, but we have to. We have to be involved in it. It doesn't mean that it has to be like a part of everything we do, but actually, like, just going and voting is like one of the biggest things you can do as just by taking action by voting. And so we really encourage voting. We encourage people to understand legislation, and that's why I'm so proud of Tobias, our youth organizer. They are so amazing at breaking down legislation into like small graphics and then putting them on like our Instagram page. You should actually go to our Instagram page right now and look at some graphics that they just put up concerning the upcoming abortion decision that's happening here in Iowa within the next 3 weeks. So that's really important. We need to understand what this government is doing, because often at times, like, they just feel like they can go and do whatever they want because they kind of view us as people that just don't care, like they just feel like, oh, they don't care, they don't know what's going on, they're stupid, but we are living in a very fascist state, and this government is very hell bent on ruining our environment and polluting the climate. Um, Iowa is the most biologically colonized state in the country, and it's the #1 contributor to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. The amount of damage that big ag has done here is astronomical. There is just ridiculous amounts of fertilizer, pesticides, uh, fungicides, fertilizers, pig waste, chicken waste, cow waste, and more that is like being thrown onto these monocropped soy and corn fields, where the roots are just very, very small, and then all of this uh, soil basically has become kind of almost a petri dish to carry all of this. It's like it's the mechanism in which it carries all of this horrible stuff into our waterways, and yet soil is so important to us, and we're losing soil so fast. The UN says we have about 60 harvests left, and that was a few years ago. And it gets into the waterways. It goes downstream eventually, because Iowa is the only state that is bordered by the Missouri and the Mississippi River. I mean, think about that. Like, this state has the biggest rivers in the world bordering it on both sides, and then they meet down in Missouri, and then everything from there goes into the Delta, and there's just so much silt buildup down there, and there's just the dead zone is like just getting bigger day by day. So, it's really important to be politically engaged because, Kim Reynolds is somebody that's saying like, hey, guess what? We can have 30,000 more CAFOs on top of the 15,000 we have now. CAFOs are concentrated animal feed operations, where pigs live these absolutely horrid lives, like in these like small spaces, and that's where they basically grow before they bring them to the meatpacking plants, where they're processed, anyway, and packaged. So obviously direct action is pretty self-explanatory. We do a lot of direct action. It doesn't always have to be illegal. You can get permits to do things, or you can be in spaces where you're just allowed to be, and do what you want to do, because we do have freedom of speech in this country and freedom of assembly. And so unfortunately though, some cops in particular in Des Moines, they like to come at you anyway. Even when you're just completely innocent, just doing something that's completely legal, they'll come up to you and stop you. Well, us anyway, because usually we're a bunch of natives and Black folks, doing stuff. So education, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. We have zines, we have so much art. We are such an art-orientated organization, and actually, the reason I have to get off sooner than later for this presentation, and why Jess is taking over, is because I'm running over to the next room after this to present on art as change, and like just how art is so central to everything that we do. We just and in fact, I'm just going to share this with you guys. We just, when they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, I mean, I know that's, very cliche, and people use that word a lot. Can you guys see this where I went to, or do I have to like stop share and start again?
No, we can see.
Okay, so yeah, this is the presentation I'll be going to next: Rematriating Stolen Power Through Art, Inspired Community Healing, Development, and Resistance. And I just want to show you some examples of how we do our art. These are light boards. These are posters. We've handed out thousands of these posters probably. I made these a few years back and they're still really popular. They're 11 by 17 size. Here they are hanging up in the Department of Corrections in Sioux City, if you can believe that, because Trish does decolonization workshops there. This is a graphic that Trish just made for our Women and Girls space for our event coming up this Sunday or every Sunday. These are art. This is art done by the Women and Girls in the Women and Girls space that we have. I'm happy to say that we are actually working with the Department of Corrections, and some folks are coming through work release programs to come to our space, and they've really, a lot of folks have said like how much of a difference it's made for them, and some folks have told us that the space helps them stay sober, and so like it's pretty amazing. And so hold on here. This is just a picture of our powwow. We make a lot of shirts, so we do a lot of art through shirts. This is the one on the right was something we made for a youth dance. Indigenous self-love and self-respect equals Indigenous power. We have defend land and body sovereignty shirts. We also have some beautiful two-spirit posters, and this is one about police violence. Here's something for, the reproductive liberation. Oh, here's something you guys would like. This is the logo I just made for Indigenous Peoples Day, which is coming up here in Iowa City in October. So we are working on Indigenous Peoples Day, the second one with the city. And we will have Jessica on here to talk about that more. Art can come in the form of a sticker as well. These are just stickers we gave out or do also give out to get people to vote. Here's an example of a zine I wrote, and then beautiful art created by Mosel Singh, Punjabi American artist from the Quad Cities. We just took part in a fashion show here in Iowa City that Alicia Velasquez hosted. And this is my son and the shirt that he made through that. We've also hosted our own fashion show in Des Moines for Truthsgiving. And here we have some, photography, some beautiful photography to show off our Truth Will Not Be Whitewashed shirts, which we have created in partnership with Humanize My Hoodie, which you all should know, who is co-owned by Andre Wright, who now just started Wright House of Fashion. And so, yeah, we get along really well with Andre. We work with him on some stuff. Here's an example of us at the front lines protesting, and some art that I made with a friend, so that we can, tell people how we feel. Another great piece. This is something I commissioned, and then Sunrose Iron Shell created this. I asked her if she could make a buffalo stomping a tractor. This is what she made, and I love it. She's got a little video here. I don't know if it'll work. Just showing her, making the piece. So, yeah, it can even be, we even do, installation art. We got in trouble for this. The cops didn't like it, but, we didn't do anything. We didn't harm anything. This is just a wagon that says colonialism. It's being shot with the arrows of decolonization. They say community, sovereignty, language, matriarchy on them. These signs say racism, missing and murdered Indigenous relative crisis. The sign says in search of stolen land. And we're pretending to take the statue down. We're obviously not, but yeah, they didn't like that. And then afterwards, we took that wagon and burned it over at a friend's piece of land. So, art comes in very different forms. And so I'm going to go back here to where I am. So yeah, and then education. We do a lot of talks. We do so many different talks. Like right now, there's an example of one. And webinars. We do lots of webinars. If you go to our YouTube page, you'll see that, or our Facebook page. We go to a lot of other people's actions and speak. We write. If you go to our blog, you'll see lots and lots of writing there. There's our blog. I also have a column in Bustle. If you type in Sikowis Nobiss and Bustle, you'll find it. I also have one that I started in Reckon that didn't last too long because then my editor got fired. But there's two articles there. One in particular I'd love you to check out, which is all about rematriation. In the end, everything we do comes down to rematriation, actually. I haven't even talked about our rematriation work, actually. So, we have so many different programs fighting CO2 pipelines, coal plants, fighting big ag, working with different cohorts and coalitions across the state and the country. And then, doing all the work we do in Sioux City, like Trish doing all that programming for healing justice for women and girls and actually the whole community. And then like all the things that Jess does, working with like teachers and schools and fighting mascots and stuff like that. Like, that's all really important. But I guess the big goal is to get land, is rematriation. Rematriation is like, to get land back, or to not just get land back, but to also bring back the matriarchy, empower the feminine, and to, if you can't get the land back, at least like fix it, at least repair it and heal it, get the prairie back. And so we've been working with different organizations and big, actually large Fortune 500, a Fortune 500 company for a while, which didn't pan out. But we're trying to get some land, firstly in Sioux City, so we can have an urban garden there and start a co-op and have our space there. So a couple acres and a small building. And then eventually maybe start a land trust. And we would like a working farm. A lot of people have this idea that prairie should be left pristine and untouched, like somehow that's how it was before colonizers came. And that's just like, that really annoys me. So people will be like, oh, I'd love to give you my land, but I don't want you to touch it. It has to stay like the way it is. So you can't be on the land, which doesn't make any sense to me, because Indigenous peoples were on the land. It's just that like we lived on it in a way that was in partnership with that land. And so that's what we're trying to bring back. And I work with Shelley Buffalo, who's not necessarily on our team, but she's consulting with us through her very small, she just started a little consulting thing called Water Panther Consulting. And so her and I do a lot of that work together. And we're really happy to say that, what is it called? Catholic workers in the Decorah area started a little like land tax website for us. So now they've been gathering money from, honestly, like a lot of religious entities like nuns and churches and such. And they're helping us raise money so we can eventually buy land. I think it's called the honornativelandfund.org. And yeah, so if you want to check that out, go there. You can go to these monthly meetings, which is really cool. They're like decolonization workshops, and they talk about different topics every month. And they're so supportive, and I really appreciate them. Yeah, so now I'd love to, that was a pretty good overview of what we do. I'd love to bring Jessica up.
And sure, I will get that switched out here in Spotlight, Jessica. There was a question in the chat. Somebody wanted to know whether you could put the link for the blog that you mentioned.
Oh, it's on our website. Yeah, just go to greatplainsaction.org, and then it's on the very top. It'll just say blog. Just click on that. But yeah, thank you, Jess. I appreciate you being here. And I just wanted to start out by asking you one question, like, what do you think about us? Like, I mean, just when you think back to how we started, like, did you ever imagine we'd be here?
Honestly, yeah, I've always known that you're going to do big things and never stop fighting. I want to apologize in advance. My internet decides to act up when I need it most. But yeah, I'm so happy with where we are as a team. It's really a great group of people that have come together, and it's people who were already doing the work who now have a network of support and camaraderie and connection to be able to do that in a more sustainable fashion.
Yeah. And you and I have been friends the longest in this team. And then also we're kind of like, if it wasn't for you saying, hey, let's go to Standing Rock, like, and I was like, Skoden, right? And you're like, Studis, that's native slang if you don't know. And we went, and if it wasn't for that, like, we might not be here, because it was really hard to get support for the work that I was trying to do. And that really opened up a big door for us. And then also, if you don't mind, could you talk about Indigenous Peoples Day so folks know what's happening, and truth giving? And then I'm also going to have to go now. So I just want to say to everybody, Ai Kitata Mahin, thank you so much for being here. Jessica's going to talk about like the things that are going on in Iowa City specifically. And then she can talk more about our representation stuff, like the mascot fight, which I think is important to know. Um, and answer your questions. So thank you so much, Jess. And thank you everybody so much. I hope you have a good day. Bye.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say I do think Sikowis would have eventually ended up at Standing Rock, even if I hadn't invited her. I was just thinking about it recently, given the recent parole involving Leonard Peltier, and thinking about how Standing Rock, was our wounded knee. We grew up hearing about, the standoff and thinking, I would have been there. I would have been, a protector. And when Standing Rock happened, there was a call out for Natives to come, and I think that was kind of the moment where you have to be like, well, I always said that I would do this, and now I kind of have to, be good on my word. So I do think she would have there eventually. Yeah, so Sikowis would like me to speak a little bit about Indigenous Peoples Day and Truth Giving, both wonderful events. Indigenous Peoples Day is an event that we started last year in partnership with the Iowa Parks Department. And it features singers and speakers and dancers and drummers. It's really a celebration of what it is to be Indigenous. It's a wonderful event, and we'll be doing it again this year, and it'll be even better. So that, I believe, is in October. And then we've been doing for a while. Part of our representation initiative is correcting false narratives, like the Thanksgiving story. And so in response, Sikowis created an event called Truth Giving, which started out many years ago, very small, just in her home. But now is a large scale event at the Englert, where we're able to bring in a wonderful musical group, audio pharmacy, and have speakers, and really address what's going on in the world for Native people. I'm just going to check questions. I'm going to try to address one of the questions in the chat. The question is, does the rematriation work involve regaining sacred objects that were stolen in places in museums and private collections? It doesn't. I don't see why it couldn't. We don't really have authority over private protections. Those aren't covered under NAGPRA. But if an instance of tribes working towards regaining an item from a museum is brought to our attention, we definitely consider that as something that we would do. That's why the representation umbrella of the work we do is so interesting. It's because it really is just kind of a catch-all for whatever needs to be done. And if that's making sure that sacred objects find their way home, then we'll help with that. Does anybody have any more questions? I'm not sure how we were doing this, if we're in chat or if people are raising their hands.
People can raise their hand and I can unmute them if they want to ask a question, or they can just type it in the chat. Thanks, Jess.
Okay. We can open it to questions, or I can just kind of keep talking more about what I've been doing, or what some of the work that our organization does. Sikowis, I think, was doing a great job of highlighting the fact that we do such, a wide and broad scope of work. One thing she did, want me to talk about was our work on eliminating Native American mascots. So we've known for about half a century now through studies that mascots are harmful for all children, not just mascots are harmful. But we still have 60-some schools, I think 65 in Iowa with Native mascots. And so we're doing what we can to get them to retire those mascots. Right now our work is focused primarily in Indianola with the Indianola Indians. And we're primarily working there because they're already allies on the ground who have been tackling this issue for decades. And so we're working there to boost their work and, make use of an already established foothold. I am not entirely certain on the date for Indigenous Peoples Day, but if I find that out, I will make sure we get that shared out for people. It will be in October sometime. Actually, no, Indigenous Peoples Day is on Indigenous Peoples Day usually. I can't really say usually because we've only done one before. But yeah, we would try to celebrate on the day.
And I can look that up on my end. There is
Monday, October 13th. Yep.
Oh, perfect. And there is a question in the chat from Austin, and then also there's somebody at the top of the screen. They had their hand up. They don't have it up anymore.
Okay.
Maybe you answered the question.
As for whether we work with the Iowa of Kansas, Nebraska, or Oklahoma, yes, we work with all Native issues in the Great Plains region. One of our, I'm not certain if he's a current board member or was a board member, but Lance Foster is Iowa, and we're really grateful for his wisdom and advice. Are there currently any Indigenous peoples-led land trusts in Iowa? Not that I know of. Land defense isn't my primary area of work, so I'm not entirely certain on that, but I don't think so. Is using an eagle as a mascot offensive? No, not unless really trying to native it up, but eagles on their own are not exclusively native. Please know that you can't touch eagle feathers. There are laws about that, but yeah, eagles as mascots are perfectly fine. Did someone have their hand up, or is there more questions? Oh, yeah, changing names of some of these towns would be a larger next step. Definitely one that we would encourage, but so I guess we're starting small and working from there. But yeah, we are in support of changing town names, especially like the more offensive they get, the more they need to change. Other questions?
Well, if there's no more questions, Jessica, we can certainly, oh, nope, here goes one.
Oh yeah. I will say the best way to support us is to share and uplift and talk about our work. Share what we're doing on social media. Talk to your friends about the issues that we're addressing, and continue to educate yourself about all the misconceptions that that are being pushed upon us. I am not sure the details on Indigenous land trusts in other states. I do know there are some, but I'm not entirely sure where they are and who's holding the trust. Yes. Let me double check the name, but I believe it was Waterloo changed their mascot recently. Yeah, so the Waterloo Indians were changed, and yeah, and that was in large part due to people showing up, going to the meetings. That is one large component of our mascot work, is encouraging people to go to their local school board meetings. I attended a meeting, it's very important to go there, and make make our voices heard. Yes, link away.
And Jessica, did you give out already, or did Sikowis give out the Instagram? The tag for the Instagram?
I am not sure if she did.
Because people can follow.
Yeah, I think we're just Great Plains.
Yep, it's just Great Plains Action Society.
Yep.
On Instagram. Yep. And you're on Facebook too?
Yep, we're on Facebook.
Okay, okay.
Can I talk about the matriarchy system? I guess I'm not entirely sure what is meant by that, but matriarchy refers to a female rule, and really a mothering rule where decisions are made in such a way that a mother would make a decision who is caring, for their child. So, I guess, is there more? Yeah. We do talk about rematriation a lot in our work, especially when it comes to actual land rematriation. And that work we do is very, acknowledging our role as it's like stewardship, but more familial, if that makes sense. Um, so it's a caring for, but it's a love-based protective caring for the land and putting its interests and appreciating it. Yeah. Yeah, many native tribes were matriarchal, in which as a political structure, the power and the decisions were made by women. Uh, some were, not all. Uh, Most of the reason that we talk about matriarchy is in response to the harm that colonially enforced patriarchy has brought upon Indigenous people, and the ruling by dominance and power and violence that can come with a patriarchal system. I would say no patch of land is too small. um, are there more questions?
Okay. Well, Jessica, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and sharing with us the work that you do. Very much appreciate it. Very appreciate Sikowis. And we will end this June session of the Lens webinar, and we look forward to everybody being at the July one. So thank you. And thanks again, Jessica.
Thank you all for having me. And if anyone wants to reach out, my email is on the website. So I'd love to hear from you.